Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Laura Bruno and I'm an intuitive astrologer. It's been a while. I actually wasn't planning on making a video today. I had this all blocked off for early in the day writing, but this topic just keeps coming up, and so I think it deserves its own video. So from January through March of 2025, we have this extended transit of the North Node in Pisces conjunct Neptune in Pisces. It's in late Pisces. So in the beginning of the month, we got kind of this dreamy, beautiful, lovely, romantic energy. That was kind of like the dominant vibe that could come through. Now that Venus has moved out of the range and we've still got the North Node and Neptune very tightly conjunct in Pisces, we're getting more of the confusion energy, the collective grief energy, problems with addictions, delusions, illusions, and it just, I'm seeing it in sessions a lot. The timelines are like super bendy and very permeable right now. But the downside of that is that some people are slipping into more of a negative timeline. And unlike sometimes where you sort of pop in and out where it's not so urgent, we're in like a really high stakes time right now. And so the people that I'm seeing where they're slipping out of the timelines, like it's not just a little bit of pain, it's a lot. Like it's serious kind of stuff. Like you could die or you're gonna lose everything. And so I'm not trying to like present fear, but just to say that these are high stakes times. And with that North Node there and Neptune there, any kind of things that are like on the agenda, on the template that need to be dealt with, that have to do with boundary issues or with addiction, especially alcohol, like that one is up the most right now that I'm seeing, where if you don't get a handle on that, it like the vibe is really pulling people down. And so gotta find ways. It's easier to upgrade addictive tendencies. It's easier to replace something than it is to just try to go cold turkey or eliminate it. And so for some people that might be, start an at-home yoga practice, or maybe have a different kind of addiction that also has like nourishing potential, like a medicinal mushroom addiction or something, mushroom coffee, or for some people, like marijuana actually can be a little higher of a vibe than the alcohol. So I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying that I'm finding that consequences right now for not having good boundaries or for not managing some of the more Neptune type issues, the consequences are harder because the North Node is right there. And in April, Saturn is going to come up and conjunct the North Node in Pisces. And so it's like now is a good time to get the lessons because they're coming really harsh now, and they're not likely to get easier in terms of like a sense of urgency and needing to have the structures and the boundaries. The challenge right now is that because Neptune has no boundaries and Neptune rules Pisces, which is very boundaryless, having that energy all concentrated there in late Pisces is making it more difficult to have discipline in some of these areas. And so that's partly why I'm making the video, just to suggest, because we've got this need for anchoring ourselves into a new reality. The positives of Neptune in late Pisces conjunct the North Node, there is this energy where we can really see the new world. We can see, we can feel and sense, and many people are dreaming of it, of kind of this 5D realm, new earth, whatever you want to call it. It has many names, but a lot of people are sensing it, and things are happening more where synchronicities are leading people into either like a positive train of events or like, ooh, the rapid downward spiral. And so one of the things to really try to tap into is just, it might even just be 5 minutes a day of meditation, but just centering yourself, pray or meditate where you're just trying to tap into like that highest vibe, that highest power of love and compassion, but just realizing that, it's kind of like this soupy energy right now, and it's very easy to get lost in the fog because Neptune also kind of rules confusion and delusion. And so we're finding out about a lot of fraud. We're finding out about a lot of deception. That's both North Node conjunct Neptune right now, but also the longer transit of Pluto in Aquarius. In my video that I made like 2 years ago now about Pluto entering Aquarius, one of the things that I talked about was that we were likely to start seeing corruption revealed in supposedly humanitarian organizations, because Aquarius is the sign of brotherly love, of humanitarianism. Yes, it rules the internet, it rules technology, revolutions, that sort of thing. But the one thing that I really just kept highlighting and just feeling like, oh, this is going to come up, was this kind of purge of, organizations that claim to be helping humanity that were not. And so all the Doge stuff that's coming up, for some people, this is very shocking. For me, as an astrologer, it's kind of like, yeah, check, there it is. But all of this is combining because for different people, this is a surprise. For some people, like we've known, there's a lot of corruption at the top. We've known, but it's likely to continue coming out. And some of these other revelations about, leaders or especially about groups are likely to continue coming out over the next year plus. And so how do we deal with that? That's going to be individual, but it's a kind of collective grief when you start realizing that so much of what you thought was reality isn't. That the fog was really there. The wool was over the eyes. That's hard. It's hard for people to admit, like, oh, I was wrong. But also it's hard when you start thinking about consequences, about things that could have been different if different decisions were made. And it's hard not to get lost in the past or lost in this kind of like overwhelming grief or confusion. And so that's partly why I'm making the video, is just to acknowledge, yes, like a lot of people are sensing a kind of collective grief. For some people, it's already here, lost homes or lost relatives to illness or to murder or, there's a lot. I mean, in my work, I'm hearing some really sad stories, but I'm also finding that the potential for upgrades is really possible, where, say you have cancerous tumors and it's like, okay, well, if you had full-blown cancer, if you were going to go down that journey, these are the metaphysical shifts that you would have to make them now, and then get rechecked. And for the people who really truly are making them, not just intending to make them, but like really actually making the shifts, they go back and they have a biopsy and it's like, oh, it wasn't cancer. And so, I mean, there's a lot in the mix, right? I mean, there's physical things, there's emotional, there's spiritual things. But what I'm talking about is kind of a Bendy timeline thing. And just to say that the stakes are high right now, but high stakes, you can also win big. And so if you've been trying to make a big shift in your life, if you've been trying to bring in this future that you've had this kind of like nebulous sense of, but you can't quite nail it down, now is the time to really be visualizing that and tapping into the energy, something that reminds you of, the future, almost like creating a future memory now and involving it in your daily life so that you have like a habit that you associate with a more positive timeline that you would like to be on. So just to give you a couple examples of kind of like how does a timeline shift feel? How do you know if you're making one or if you've made one? One of the things that always really jumps out at me is when there's been a big timeline shift, my schedule gets crazy. Like everything's crossed out, everybody has rescheduled, there's email mix-ups. It's like Mercury retrograde, but like, magnified. And it's all with the timing, because sometimes you'll make a shift and it's positive and you feel great. You feel that lift, you feel like, oh, wow. But then you can't connect with certain people anymore. Maybe you had plans to meet up with each other and like one or the other of you forgot, or it gets canceled, or there's a big blow up or something. It's because like your vibrations are no longer compatible. Like you're not in the same relationship with certain people when you're on a different timeline than they are. And depending on how far apart your timelines are, it's uncomfortable for both parties. And so knowing that, kind of realizing that sometimes when we make upgrades, not everybody makes the upgrade with us, it can help to mitigate some of the grief, because I'm also hearing from people where they're really upset that certain relationships are like just exploding or more likely falling away, because Neptune tends to be less dramatic, tends to just sort of like wear away through erosion. But just like on a, big sand dune, there's the slow, steady erosion of Neptune, but then you get another transit or something that activates all of that, and then it can be a sudden, like, whoosh, landslide. And so we're in that kind of phase right now, and it's likely to ease up slightly when Neptune enters Aries. That happens on March 30th. But then, as I said, in April, we get Saturn moving up closer to the North Node. And we will have Venus, we will have Mercury there, retrograde, but there will be other energies in effect. Messages can come through. I feel like for people who are wanting to work with these energies, and the energies are around you whether you want to work with them or not, I recommend working with them, because then you can find ways of upgrading your experience. But with Neptune, the energy of grief, the energy of loss, the sadness, it can feel like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. That doesn't feel good. I'd rather just zone out. But I'm making this video because in April, like, Saturn is much harsher than Neptune, right? So it's kind of like, get the message now, because then when Saturn comes around in April, you can use that energy for like building something, for creating a strong foundation for your spiritual life, or creative projects, bringing them much more down to earth. So like, deal with the Neptune now. You can engage it on a different level. You could engage it by making things more beautiful, by asking yourself, what would make life more beautiful right now? That's going to guide you well, because it is still a Neptune kind of energy. So a couple time periods to look back towards. The last time that the North Node was in Pisces was like 2006, 2007. So it would be 2006 where it's in like these degrees that we're dealing with right now. But also 2016, especially like March of 2016, March 11th, 2016, there was an exact conjunction with the Sun, the South Node, and Chiron in Pisces. And it wasn't quite as far up in Pisces as where all of this activity is this spring, but pretty close. And that was a major event. I happen to remember that date because that's the date that my dad died. But it was a big kind of collective energy around that time related to grief and healing and things like that. And so just life cycles, right? Like things cycle around. And so the eclipse that we're having in Virgo on March 14th, that may also pull up some of those energies from right around mid-March of 2016. So just have a look back then. That was kind of like the nodal opposition to where we're at now. And as I said, these things, they link a lot of times. And so if you're feeling kind of blindsided, like, where am I feeling this grief? It might be collective because there's a lot of change right now. And I feel like there's going to be more of it. And so people that tend to be a little more intuitive, a little more precognitive, sometimes we kind of get that sense ahead of time. But it can also be that, there's stuff from the past that seemed like it was dealt with that is coming up again for review or coming up again for release. And so one of the positives about Pisces and Neptune is the ability to release, the ability to just wash things away. That may be with tears, that could be with, chanting Sanskrit, that could be doing like a taze meditation or something. It doesn't really matter what it is, but having some sort of spiritual discipline, especially in February and March, also April of 2025, is going to serve you well. That's a way of integrating the South Node in Virgo, the North Node in Pisces energy. Virgo, more discipline, but also more anxiety, more freaking out when things are nebulous, when things are unsettled. During this time, it's going to feel unsettled. And so being able to get used to the uncertainty, being able to trust in some kind of higher power. And it's easier to trust in a higher power if you have kind of like a little daily give and take with that. Same way as if you were trying to create a more intimate friendship with someone, you wouldn't just expect, at least usually not, that you would just kind of meet somebody first moment and just like plop all your problems on their table and expect them to fix them all for you. It's hard to trust someone for that. And so when you're looking to trust like a higher power, however you conceive of that, even if you can't conceive of that, that's okay. Because one of the ways that you start getting to know that is the little moments, it's like passing someone in the hallway and being like, hey, and maybe you say, hey, like for 3 years and you never spoke to each other any other time, but at least like you recognize each other. It might be easier than when you're in a crisis to reach out to a familiar face. It's very similar with having some kind of a spiritual practice. You don't want to have to do it like when you're in the emergency. You want to have that as a basis, as kind of a lifeline support to help you avoid some emergencies, but also to make it easier to trust, because sometimes the messages that come through from a higher power, they're not the things that your little ego is going to think of. It's a higher power. It's not your ego. And so sometimes they'll sound a little crazy. Sometimes they'll sound really out there, and there'll be grief around, oh my gosh, everyone's going to think I'm crazy. But if you are trustful, if you are accustomed to, oh, I asked for this little thing and then this support arrived. I asked for this and then this support arrived. Oh, look at that. I was thinking that I needed this and then these synchronicities happen. Like when you start living that kind of life, it becomes so much easier during the challenging time periods to recognize what's staring you in the face. Because a lot of times, especially right now with Neptune and the North Node in Pisces, it's confusing, it's foggy, it's devastating when we feel like we're separated, like we can't find that higher power. And so you want to practice, you want to summon, but also just realize that if you pray, there are answers. So I find it's a nice kind of prayer. The Serenity Prayer, really big fan. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That wisdom piece is essential, because otherwise you're banging your head against stuff that you just can't budge. Wasted energy. But if you do that long enough, then you get so discouraged, you're like, oh, why bother? And then there's something that comes along that you could shift that you're just like, oh, yeah, I've tried so much. You want that wisdom. You want to have the wisdom to know the difference, like what is worth investing your energy in right now and what is a no or what is a not yet. So the other thing that I think is essential in terms of prayer is asking for the eyes to recognize the answer. Like, give me the eyes to see, the ears to hear, so that when you're saying help, help, and help arrives, you recognize it. And so I just wanted to share this because I'm hearing both amazing breakthrough stories where things that seemed impossible are like coming into being with these timeline upgrades, with these shifts, and it's beautiful. But I'm also hearing from people where like it's like a landslide. You know, they've been getting messages for a while saying don't. They keep doing it, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm kind of getting away with it. I don't have to really change, you know. I'm going to do it. But then the landslide comes, and the landslide can be very sudden. And so I'm trying to support people. This is a good time to be proactive. If you feel like something is a weak link, it's a really good time to address it. It's a really good time if you are having issues with your plumbing, either physical in your body or physical in your house. But Neptune in Pisces, North Node, you know, we're talking floods, we're talking, you know, watery things, leaks, that sort of thing. So the other thing is I'm recording this on the Leo full moon. Leo rules the blood and the heart, but with the whole Neptune energy, there's also potential for like bleeding out or, you know, mysterious bleeding kinds of things. I'm not trying to say that this is definitely going to happen to anyone in particular, just kind of a heads up that if you're having little whispers like, oh, fix the dishwasher, or oh, you know, I'm really bruising like a lot, you know, maybe get that checked out or find ways to address it, just because stuff does not have boundaries right now. And we're in this kind of weird, necessary course correction for humanity. I think ultimately it's going to be positive, but it's probably going to be kind of bumpy and uncomfortable for a while. And there are ways to work with that energy, really tap into flow, tap into intuition, and maybe do some good grief work. Tears can be very cleansing so that you can open up the space for all of these new energies that are really going to start kicking in, especially like once Neptune moves into Aries March 30th, but then a lot of things are changing signs this year. So really fresh energy. Deal with the old stuff now. It will actually be easier to release. Doesn't really feel fantastic to have to release it, but if you know it needs to go, this is the time to let it go. If you need additional support, I do offer private sessions. There's a link to my blog and website below. And also, I'm going to put the link to the Pluto and Aquarius video that I did 2 years ago because it's super relevant right now. So I hope this helps. It was completely unplanned, but it just seemed necessary. So you guys take good care. Peace.